Provoking Ethiopian government for offensive. Tigray interim administration called on ambassadors of different countries to support transition. Hello and thank you all for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. Oromia, Benishangul and Gambela regional states have donated over 282 million birr support to Tigray to rehabilitate victims amid the conflict. Heads of the state visited some of the victims in Mekelle. Alula Teklamariam tells you more.
Millions have become victims of the law enforcement operation in Tigray, and majority of them are in need of support, where various local and foreign humanitarian actors are grabbed to. The federal government recently announced the distribution of humanitarian aid to over 3.8 million people in the region. Part of the initiative, Oromia, Benishangul Gumuz and Gambela regional states donated over 282 million birr support to Tigray to rehabilitate the victims. Accordingly, Oromia region supported 200 million birr in cash and 57 million birr in kind. And the Benishangul Gumuz region donated 15 million birr and 1 ambulance. And Gambela region supported 10 million birr in cash. The heads of these regional states called for cooperative efforts to rehabilitate the victims.
አብረን ነው ችግር ውስጥ ያለ ነው ከዚህ ችግርም የምንወጣው አብረን ታይዘን ተደጋግፈን ነው ከዚህ ውስጥ የምንወጣው
We are in a common challenge and we shall overcome it when we are together. One should not doubt that we shall pass this situation. Everything will pass, leaving history behind, and supporting the people of Tigray is not a matter of choice for the state of Oromia. It is just our mandate to do so. This is what we learn from Ethiopian cultural values. We'd rather choose to stop our developments in Oromia than to see people dying in Tigray.
ቀጣይም የከፋ ነገር ከመጣ ኦሮሚያ ውስጥ ያለውን ልማት እናቆማለን እንጂ ትግራይ ውስጥ ህይወት ሊቆም አይችልም።
ተደጋግፈን ያንዱ ክልል የዛኛው ክልል ህመም እየተረዳ
It is impossible to address challenges single-handedly. Our common problems require our joint efforts to curb. So the government of Benishangul Gumuz is ready to support Tigray, as it means solving our own problem.
ብዙ ችግሮች የደረሱባት የትግራይ ክልል የወንድማማችነት
This is a part of the national campaign to support Tigray, whose socio-economic activity has seriously been damaged. We, the 3 regional states, organized this support to show our solidarity with the people of Tigray. It has to be strengthened.
Chief Executive Officer of the Interim Administration of Tigray State, Mulu Negga, to his part, called for intensified efforts to rehabilitate the victims in the state.
ጋፉ ትልቁ ነው ከደጋፉ በላይ ግን የወንድማማችነት
We value the support, but the spirit of brotherhood expressed by the support sounds more. It is a symbol of unity and togetherness. What the Tigray people currently need is a solidarity who shares the feeling of the people. As the saying goes, a friend in need is a friend indeed. The people of Tigray have been witnessing a spirit of brotherhood and solidarity from these 3 regions in their hard times since the beginning. And we value this historic support.
ወንድም ህዝብ የሚታወቀው በችግር ጊዜ ነው
Heads of these 3 states visited some of the victims in Mekelle city.
Tigray State Interim Administration called on the diplomatic and donor communities to beef up the humanitarian and rehabilitation support going on in the state. This came when the Interim Administration briefed today over 40 Addis-based ambassadors in the state capital, Mekelle City, on the current situation there. CEO of the Tigray Interim Administration, Mulu Negga, has updated the ambassadors from the various countries on the relief and rehabilitation efforts going on in the state, as well as peace-building institutions. Accordingly, it was disclosed that the state of Tigray has built peace institutions at every level, right from Kabele, the lowest administrative unit, up to the highest. Mulu told the ambassadors the fact that relief operations are going on in the state after the law enforcement operation the government was forced to take in the aftermath of the heinous attack on the Northern Command. He has also elaborated on the human rights protection efforts the state and the government are taking. Mulu has taken the occasion to call on the ambassadors and international donor communities to help beef up the support of the humanitarian and relief operations. The ambassadors, who asked various questions for clarification, have pledged to stand by Ethiopia in its efforts to provide relief and humanitarian assistance. They have also appreciated the briefing, underlining that such moves will create more clarity, thereby showing the openness of the government of Ethiopia concerning the situation in the state. Amnesty International's unrealistic report of mass killings in Aksum and the deliberate misleading reports by some international media outlets following the report confused the international community a big deal. What really happened there was on the contrary, as the filming an EBC crew conducted there confirms. It is to be recalled that EBC produced news stories speaking with residents of Aksum during the annual Aksum Zion celebration 2 days after the alleged mass killing. Suntayo Tamrat explains it more.
Aksum town is one of the areas the TPLF junta made great infrastructure damage. The junta clearly showed its atrocity to the nation as well as Tigrayanis while destroying the Aksum airport, including the airfield. The clique destroyed it because it planned the town to be center of war. After the National Defense Forces occupied the city, socio-economic activities gradually returned to normalcy. After several weeks now, the remains of TPLF clique and the international media have reported mass killings of about 800 people in the town of Aksum 2 days before the Aksum Zion annual festival. However, a team of journalists from ETV had been in the town 2 days earlier to report one of Ethiopia's big religious events, the commemoration of the Saint Mary Zion of Aksum. Residents had this to say on the peace situation in the town.
ሰላም ነው ባሉ እንደ ድሮው ብዙ ሰው የለም
In the preceding years, there were a lot of people coming from every corner of the country. But as you see now, there aren't many people. These are congregations from Aksum only. What we want is peace. We want Ethiopia to be peaceful. It is a peaceful celebration, but there aren't as many people as before. This is because the road was blocked due to the conflict in the Tigray region. However, the holiday is very good. What we want from now on is the government who rules us in a democratic and peaceful way.
As you see it, it's beautiful. This is very good. But previously, the crowd was too big. We want God's mercy so that we will celebrate the holiday with other Ethiopians next time. We also need peace. We want everything to be restored into previously situation. We are all one. We are one and united Ethiopia.
We expect the next celebration will be as extraordinary as usual. We will celebrate it with great joy as a nation gets completely peaceful. God is our hope.
Since the TPLF junta had a plan to use Aksum as its strategic war center, much humanitarian crisis could have happened to the area, but the reality is as what was witnessed by the residents of Aksum. However, few global media outlets, including Associated Press, CNN and BBC, reported the killings of over 800 people in the town of Aksum. The simple question this media could ask, and that can make their report credible, could be how could this much congregation only from Aksum town attended the St. Mary holiday only after 2 days of the mass killings, even wearing in white and showing no signs of grief? How could they dare to take their little children with them to the church while potential killings are knocking their doors? These are queries those news media should have asked before broadcasting such largely erroneous and misleading information.
The United Nations Development Programme, in a memo to the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, puts the blame on TPLF for provoking the government of Ethiopia to take offensive. The memo said the government demonstrated too much forbearance towards repeated provocations of the TPLF, while the international community remains idle to offer help to the new leadership for a peaceful transition. Kasaun Chani presents the rest of the memo as follows.
The United Nations Top Development Agency said in a memo to the United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres that leadership in Ethiopia's Tigray region deserves much of the blame for provoking a federal government's bloody offensive against the clique. The confidential 4-page memo signed by Achim Steiner, the administrator of the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, says the Tigray People's Liberation Front, Ethiopia's former ruling political party, provokes the Ethiopian government offensive by attacking and seizing Ethiopia's northern command headquarters in Tigray in early November 2020 in what would have been an active war everywhere in the world, and one that typically triggers military response in defense of any nation. The memo provides a largely sympathetic account of Ethiopia's role in a crisis, echoing government talking points and repeating Ethiopian leadership says that the international community has felt addressed around provocations over the past years, including its opposition to government reforms and refusal to engage in political talks with the government. The memo also urged donor states to focus more on development and humanitarian goals, less on reprimanding the Ethiopian government over its human rights record and especially the excesses committed during the conflict. It recommends that an investigation into human rights abuses be led by Ethiopia's own National Human Rights Commission, possibly with international participation. In a context like Ethiopia, this approach is likely to be counterproductive and will yield no results, the memo states, referring to taking a confrontational tack. The memo paints a damning portrait of the Tigrayan political leadership, characterizing it as an obstacle to the government's reform agenda, while faulting foreign governments for failing to call the Tigrayans out over the past 2 years when their actions challenged the rule of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The ghosts of a repressive 27-year TPLF regime continue to torment the country, and winning the hearts and minds for social cohesion requires accepting that there is blame on all sides, including the international community. It states, the United Nations memo says that Abiy has initially reluctant to use force in Tigray despite the risk of appearing weak and withheld financial support to Tigrayan authorities to get them to back down on holding an election independently from the rest of the country. But it says Tigrayan troops forced his hand with air attack on the Ethiopian Army's northern command and Amori facilities. Since the fighting began, the Ethiopian government has not received credit for confidence-building measures it has taken to contain the situation, the memo says. It cites the payment of 2 months of unpaid salaries to government workers, as well as the restoration of key electrical, banking and telecommunication services. It repeats the Ethiopian talking point that the TPLF released some 10,000 prisoners from the town of Alamada, contributing to insecurity and complicating efforts by an interim administration appointed by the Ethiopian government to govern. The memo also underscores the urgency of an expanded United Nations role in Tigray, investigating in peace building and recovery efforts. Our assessment is that the United Nations is not yet ready for an effective response, a main part of which is explained by insecurity, but also internal preparedness, the memo says. Access and communications for relief workers and journalists have been sharply cut off in a battle zone, complicating efforts to penetrate a bulge of misinformation that has emerged from Tigray in recent months. The memo titled Mission to Ethiopia focused on Tigray summarizes a Skopje mission to Ethiopia by Ahuna Eziakona, director of UNDP's Africa Regional Bureau, who held meetings with Abiy and Ethiopian President Sahle-Work Zewde. It suggests that Ethiopia's leadership is open to a broader role by the United Nations. Initial anger against the international community's pushback is now waning as more partners reach out to the federal government and express a higher degree of understanding the current situation, the memo says. The Prime Minister specifically singled out the Secretary General as among those who extended a hand of friendship and engaged constructively. It also praises a recent visit by the Executive Director of the World Food Programme that could open doors for increased humanitarian access.
The World Bank Senior Advisor at World Bank Washington, District of Columbia, Dr. Aklog Birara, through a letter issued yesterday, urged the UN Security Council to be fair and impartial regarding circumstances in Ethiopia. In his letter, Dr. Aklog Birara indicated that Ethiopia is a founding member of the UN and a major contributor to peacekeeping operations. It hosts the African Union and numerous UN specialized agencies. He underscored that the international community failed to hold the TPLF and its allies accountable for the numerous reported and unreported Maikadra-like killings throughout Ethiopia, reversing the matter and accusing the victims as responsible for crimes they never committed is unprecedented in the annals of recent history. This undermines the moral high ground and authority of international institutions, including the UN and the AU. The TPLF must be designated as a terrorist organization. It committed heinous crimes and treason. It is also determined to make Ethiopia another Syria, Somalia, or Yemen. This is hardly the interest of Africa or the world community, he underlined. A unified, stable, and prosperous Ethiopia is in the interest of the international community. This is where the community of nations must focus. Sanctioning Ethiopia will do the exact opposite. Economic and other sanctions against Ethiopia will inflame the situation further. It will be unprecedented. This option must not even be contemplated by the UN. Such a move will in fact embolden extremist, terrorist, and other dangerous forces in the Horn of Africa, he added. To be relevant, the UN Security Council must be fair and impartial, he stressed. From the League of Nations up to now, Ethiopia as a country has been committed to collective security. It is committed to the foundational principle in the UN Charter of Non-Interference of any state or organization in the domestic affairs of any other nation, the letter reads. Ethiopians are holding demonstrations in Washington, D.C. and New York today and tomorrow under the theme Unity for Ethiopia. The demonstrations aim to debunk the false propaganda being spread by TPLF-paid individuals and media outlets that tarnish Ethiopia's image and undermine its sovereignty. Emmanuel Jorge presents the story from ENA.
Some organizers of the demonstration from different states have talked to Ethiopian news agency. They said remnants of the junta and the media supporting them have been exerting maximum efforts to mislead the international community about what happened during the law enforcement operation in Tigray. The coordinators noted that the groups and media outlets spreading false information, ignoring the activities underway in reconstructing of Tigray and providing humanitarian assistance by the government, the diaspora, and various charitable organizations. They stressed that the act not only tarnishes Ethiopia's image, but is considered as an attack on the sovereignty of the country.
Ethiopians are angered by this attempt of remnants of TPLF to tarnish the image of our country, distributing money to the media all over the world. What they have done can have huge impact. We are led to denounce the riffraff, but everyone is now ready to do so. This really matters for our country. As you know, this threatens our existence and identity. So Ethiopian diaspora all over the world have created movement.
በመላ ዓለም የሚገኙ ዲያስፖራዎችን በዚህ ጉዳይ ላይ ተነቃንቀዋል። ግሩፕ Remnants of the junta are tarnishing the image of the country by spreading misinformation abroad. Various efforts have been made to address this and respond to the movement. In this regard, various efforts have been exerted by the diaspora community in various institutions to inform the international community about the reality in the country they reside in and inform government officials or local government representatives by launching Twitter campaigns.
Furthermore, the coordinator stated that Ethiopians living in the United States will not tolerate the pressure by Egypt and Sudan with regard to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Therefore, demonstrations are being held in Washington, D.C. and New York to condemn the misinformation spread about Ethiopia through international media.
Ethiopia is a country that remained a sovereign state for many years. Only the Ethiopian government and the Ethiopian people should do what they have to do in their country. We want to convey our message that we should not violate the sovereignty of the country. We would like to convey a special message that the negotiations with Sudan and Egypt on GERD should end peacefully.
Various messages are and will be conveyed at the rallies, expected to attract a large number of Ethiopians from Washington, D.C. area, according to the coordinator of the demonstration. Ahead of the UN Security recent meeting in New York, Ethiopians will protest against the interference of foreign powers in Ethiopia's internal affairs.
The Ministry of Health said the country will start vaccination against COVID-19 on Saturday, March 14, 2021. Ethiopia received 2.2 million doses of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines under the global COVAX scheme last Sunday. The country has announced plans to vaccinate 20% of its population against the pandemic by the end of 2021. According to the Ministry of Health, the number of new COVID-19 infections and deaths from the virus is increasing rapidly in the country. Ethiopia has so far reported 168,335 COVID-19 cases, with 139,532 recoveries and 2,451 deaths. And finally, the Sugar Corporation has announced that Bella's sugar factory will start production in a month. However, CEO of Sugar Corporation said the factory needs the support of the federal government as it has been unable to mobilize heavy machineries to go fully operational. Goshu Maliso has more.
7 years back, Metal and Engineering Corporation Metec took a $235 million contract to build Bella's sugar factory project. But as all sugar projects commenced throughout the country turned to be failure, the Bella Sugar project remained one of them. The project only reached 65% of its construction stage in 5 years' time while it was under Metec. Evaluating the poor performance of the project, the government cancelled the contract and handed it over to another company. CEO of the Sugar Corporation said the work is now well on progress under the new contractor.
Terminating the contract has taken a long period of time because the project has already been started. We had to evaluate each and every undertakings of the project. We had to follow the legal procedure to terminate the agreement with Metec. Once we terminated the contract, we had to go through careful plans to fix what the gaps in the previous construction. Our plan by then was to enable the factory start early production by March this year.
Despite the work has not been done as intended due to the outbreak of the coronavirus and other technical issues, the corporation is striving to start early production with 4 hectares of sugarcane in a month or so, the CEO pointed out.
Among the total 30,000 hectares of sugarcane being cultivated, the 4,000 hectares of sugarcane is available to start the production. The rest 9 hectares of sugarcane are obsolete and would be replaced by new sugarcane. This will be done in the coming year.
The process of procurement and foreign currency shortage are the bottlenecks to import machines to start production. Wayo explained, the CEO demanded the support of the federal government to mobilize idle machines in other factories to enable Bella's sugar plant go into production with full capacity.
You're watching Addis News Hour. A quick reminder of the day's headlines. UNDP blames TPLF for repeatedly provoking Ethiopian government for offensive. And Tigray interim administration calls on ambassadors of different countries to support transition. And that's all we had for now.